What's up, guys? We are back for another Super 7 Masters of the Universe review, taking a look at the first of two Ultimate figures. So of course that means we're taking a look at He-Man today. We've got him here in the standard brown mailer box, although for the Ultimate line these are a bit oversized. You can see we've got the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe logo on the front, and then inside this guy we have got a great vintage-inspired card with the red lava burst theme all over it. It's just fantastic. This really does it on a lot of levels for me. Beautiful artwork, He-Man's in the bubble, and then the back of the package features He-Man transforming. We've got some instructions on how to swap heads, as well as a great cross-sell for other Super 7 figures. So let's do it. Let's pull this guy out and take a look. And here he is out of the package, our Ultimate Filmation He-Man from Super 7. So this is a figure that obviously has a lot of buzz around it just because of the fact that, well, the original Filmation He-Man from Mattel is frankly a pretty solid figure and just commands a stupid price on the aftermarket. Even though he was able to have been gotten a few different ways after the fact, after the demise of Matty Collector, that figure still commands a ridiculous price point. And, you know, maybe it's worth it. It is a cartoon He-Man. But we do finally have a different version from Super 7, and this guy offers up a lot in terms of options and accessories. So if you're like me, someone who has the original one, you can use this guy to be something else, you know, while still being a He-Man figure. So it's kind of cool, and I've definitely been looking forward to take a look at this guy. So we're going to dig right in. Of course, we're going to take a look at Articulation first. I don't really think we're going to be too surprised here. So we're going to start at the head, and we have got a ball peg. He can look up a little bit, so you can do the, you know, looking up and off to the side pretty well. He can't really look down too much. The head just kind of goes back to neutral. Rotate, arms go out, rotate, bicep swivel, single jointed elbow. We've got hinges and rotation at the wrist. We do not have a vertical hinge on the right wrist, so that's a difference from the Mattel figure. That joint was added to help better hold his sword in the air in the iconic transformation pose. So we've got that. It's not a huge hindrance to me personally. I'm still surprised that they haven't put it in here. We've got an ab crunch back and forth, got a waist twist. Legs go out, they kick forward, they kick back. You can rotate in that thigh there. Single jointed knee. You've got a boot cut, and then you have got rockers, and then you've got ankle hinges down here. Of course, these guys employ the newer style. Well, it's not a new joint. This is certainly not a new joint for any company, but this is the newer style for MOTU Classics Filmation, especially when compared to that original He-Man, because he has one of the ugliest ankle joints I have ever seen for a figure that, frankly, I absolutely love. It has one of the worst joints ever. Despite it being fully functional, it is just an eyesore. So thankfully, this guy has a more traditional ankle rocker, and it is very much functional. So this guy has just about everything you would expect to find in a MOTU Classics style figure, save for the vertical hinge on that right wrist. Now, as far as the look goes here, this is a pretty close approximation to what you might expect to find in a He-Man in the Filmation form. So I think from a general perspective here, he very much looks the part. I do have a few gripes here and there, don't get me wrong, and we will compare against the original, the one from Mattel. But I think for the most part, this guy looks pretty good. We do have different parts being used in some ways, so this guy does not have the same boots as that He-Man. He doesn't have the same loincloth. We've got the one that Super 7's been using with a lot of figures recently. I think we first saw this on Triclops. I could be wrong, but we've seen it on other figures, so it's not a new piece, but it's a slightly different style from what that Mattel figure has. We do have a lighter gray harness, and then of course you've got the red iron cross there. We've got the orange belt, orange bracers done up in a very minimalistic style, not a whole lot of pizzazz to it. You do have the sheath on the back, which a lot of folks seem to be upset about this being a continual problem, is that it faces what a lot of people say to be the wrong way. Generally, this is depicted as being pointing to the right, so when he pulls the sword out, he can better pull it out. But it's depicted other ways at other times as well, too. So I'm not too hung up on that, really. You cannot move it though on this figure. On the Mattel figure, it was movable. On this guy, it is stuck in that left position. So you'd have to cut it off and then re-glue it, I suppose, if you really wanted to move it around. Of course, the big thing to talk about with this guy is the shine, and I don't want to have to harp on it, really, because for the most part, I think it's not too bad. I do, of course, have some pretty bright LED lights blasting this figure right now, so take that with a grain of salt. He is pretty shiny. He is definitely going to be shinier than the Mattel figure, and it might be shinier than some of the other Super 7 figures, but that ultimately comes down to the fact that this guy is You know, it's He-Man, he's almost entirely naked. So you've got a lot of that exposed flesh plastic. And like I've said recently, I really think the more human skin tones kind of exhibit the problem, the quote-unquote problem, more than others. It's not really bothering me all that much with He-Man. Where it's really going to come down to it for me is in the face, and there's a difference in skin tone here as well, which I can't stop noticing now. So you do have a shine, and I don't think anybody expected otherwise. It's not a painted sample like the prototype, but I don't think it's too bad. And when you get it outside of, I guess, quote-unquote studio lights, it's not going to be nearly as noticeable. But when it comes to that head, I do have a little bit of a pain point when it comes to that, just because of the fact that in general, I do think it is a little glossier than the body, but I do think the sculpt is pretty much on point, and it looks like this is a brand new sculpt. This does not look like the exact same as the Mattel He-Man, and this also seems to have different features, because there are full ears underneath this guy, and the Mattel figure doesn't have them that I can tell. And he's also got rubbery hair, whereas the Mattel version is very rigid. So I do think that the likeness is pretty much there. Well, as far as you can be correct in a likeness towards a cartoon, but you get my drift. I do think that the eyes and the eyebrows are painted pretty cleanly, and the hair very much works for me. It's kind of that matte, dull yellow that we get with this particular line for kind of a matte, cartoony finish, of course. So I think he very much looks the part. My biggest gripe, of course, is going to be the sheen to it to an extent, but overall, I think he very much works. And for folks who don't have a Filmation He-Man, I think you'll be pretty happy with him. But other folks, you know, you might still have an issue with the fact that he is definitely going to be glossier than your Mattel figure, even more so when it comes to that face. And real quick, here is our comparison. So we've got our Filmation Super7 version on the left, our Filmation Mattel version on the right. And of course, they're very similar. Obviously, that's going to be the case here. But we do have some differences, and the big one for me is still going to come down to just the finish on the figures. So, you know, whether you agree or not that the shine is a problem, you know, like I said, some folks don't really care about it, and it's really not bothering me all that much in this particular figure either. It's just, it has to be noted. So we've got a definitive gloss on this figure compared to the Mattel figure. Obviously, this guy's made of plastic. He's going to shine in the light. It's going to reflect off of him. There's going to be a sheen, but it's pretty obvious that this guy, you know, he kind of looks like he's wet almost, like he's that glossy. And then, of course, the face is glossier, and you can tell the faces really aren't the same either. We've also got a darker versus lighter harness on the figure. You can see the loincloths are different, and then, of course, we've got those different boots down there as well that have, you know, those different joints. And this joint is just the ugliest thing. It's so bad. But yeah, you've got your two different figures there. So while they're basically the same thing, they do stand out amongst each other. They don't look like carbon copies of one another. Now, as far as accessories goes, being an Ultimate figure, that is where things really get ramped up a bit, and especially in comparison to the original Mattel Filmation He-Man, because he frankly came with basically nothing. He comes with the power sword, and he came with that little Grayskull brick sword holder thing. Other than that, he was just a figure. This guy comes with a tremendous amount of accessories, all things considered. So we have got 3 extra heads, and we have got 3 weapon type accessories, but there's also another thing that's included in this package, which I figure we'll talk about now. I guess it's not an accessory, but it's an extra thing, and that would be the kind of backer card that we get with the Ultimate style figures. So we've got a very classic style He-Man going, you know, in the front of Castle Grayskull, transforming, says by the power of Grayskull, and then you've got a bio on the back that's done up by Skrullos in He-Man lore. So I don't know, I thought that's kind of cool. I like those kind of things, so it's an extra, maybe not an accessory, but it's an extra. So obviously you can see here that we've already got another head on this guy. So this guy comes with a Faker style Filmation head, and what's cool about this that I never saw advertised until people started getting it, this head glows in the dark, which is just fantastic, and that's definitely something that works for me. And this is probably one of the better examples that you can see that when there is a little bit of paint on this head, the gloss is basically gone. It's not a fully painted head, but obviously there's a lot of paint around the eyes to give it that glowing, you know, robot kind of effect, and he very much does not have that sheen. This is probably going to be my go-to head for this guy, to have an actual Filmation style Faker type of head. So that's really, really nice, and I dig that quite a bit. We have got the Laughing Prince Adam head, which compared to that figure, you know, this is another example of the gloss effect on these figures when they don't have a lot of paint on them, because that figure's head is fully painted and there's no gloss. Otherwise, if you need one of these, you've got it now, I suppose. I don't see myself using that, but it's cool to have it. And then the other accessory, as far as heads go, we have got one of the robot He-Man heads, and this is not Faker. This is the like He-Man decoy robot that is made, and it's pretty nicely done. It's cast in the gray plastic. It's got a painted hair sculpt on it, and then we've got painted eyes, teeth, and then the red wires that run down with a little black inlay. So I really like this. I don't know that I'm going to use it a lot, but it's definitely going to be fun to kind of switch things up a bit. Between the two heads you see right now, these are probably my go-to, and I just dig the sculpt on this. It's wacky and weird and fun. So that's really what I like. But when it comes down to it, a glow-in-the-dark He-Man head, you've sold me already. So as far as weaponry, we have a power sword, and this guy's a little different from what we saw with the Mattel version. It's lighter in color. It's lighter than his harness, so it's not the same color as that. Of course, you can put it in the sheath back there. So you've got that. Then we have got this guy here. So this is a power axe, but it's not like one we see very often. This is the Mark Taylor concept power axe. So I don't think this has ever been made in toy form. It's done up in the same kind of plastic, same color scheme. It's a really cool, fun nod to, the history of Masters of the Universe. So that's really fantastic. I'm very happy with that. And then we've got this big guy. This is our shield, and you can see here, you might be asking, well, why in the world is this thing so big? And frankly, I don't have 100% an answer for why. I have my assumptions here. So this thing looks very much like the DC Mini Comics version of this shield that He-Man has. This looks very much like some of the Alcala style shields that we've seen in artwork from years past. But there is also an instance in the cartoon where both He-Man and Man-at-Arms use a shield that look just like this, that is relatively large in size, but it's fully gray. It doesn't have the red inlay. So this would be like He-Man's version of that shield, possibly. I think that might be what they're going for. That makes the most sense. But again, I don't know for sure. There's nothing in the box that says this is X, Y, and Z. So those are my assumptions here. It does have a handle on the back. I'm probably going to use this, honestly. I really like it. It very much fits the Filmation-y kind of low detail look and feel. But I like the idea of the Filmation He-Man actually having more than just a power sword in every occasion. So am I happy with this figure? Yeah, I'm happy with this figure. I do think it has a few issues here and there, namely in the glossy plastic area. I think it's a little worse on this guy for me, just because of the fact he has so much exposed skin. That's really what causes the issue. The more exposed human type skin you have, the more you're going to see the gloss. Otherwise, though, I think the figure really excels at driving home the Filmation look. I think the figure really excels at having a tremendously awesome array of accessories, from different types of weapons to the very awesome Faker head, the very awesome robot He-Man head, and of course, just having 4 different heads makes the amount of things you can do with this figure exponentially greater. So Super7 went kind of all out in terms of giving folks what they wanted to be able to do things with this guy, especially like me, because I don't need 2 of the same figure on my shelf. This gives me an option to have different types of He-Man with the same body. So it very much works out in a lot of folks' favor. If you ever wanted a Filmation He-Man, now is the time to strike. Get this figure while you can, because just like the first one, it's only going to go up in value once they're truly gone. So that's going to do it for this look at the Super7 Masters of the Universe Ultimate Filmation He-Man. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.